We're here in Chicago with Beverly Dunjill, who is a Tuskegee Airman. It's April 18th, 2008, and on Sunday he's going to be 81 years old. So happy birthday. And can you tell me, where were you when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
I was at home taking a shower, actually. I just got out of the shower, and that was in the evening. And when I heard about the December 7th, the attack by the Japanese in Pearl Harbor.
How old were you at the time?
I think I was about 41. I was about 15 or 16, somewhere along there.
Okay. Where did you live?
I lived in Chicago.
Okay. You were in high school then?
Yes.
Okay. And then when did you join the service?
No. Well, I did when I got out of high school. When I graduated from high school, I volunteered and went in to the U.S. Army Air Corps at that time.
Okay. And
from there to Tuskegee, actually to Keesler Field, Mississippi first, which had the physical, psychological, and psychomotive examinations. And that the physical was perhaps the longest. That took something like 3 days to complete the physical, because they went over you with a fine-tooth comb and trying to eliminate you as much as possible, because they didn't want blacks to fly. So that was part of the reason for the long physical.
did you want to fly?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So did you know when you joined that if you accomplished what you wanted to do, that you would go down to Tuskegee?
Yes. That was, ever since I can remember, I always wanted to be a pilot. I've always wanted to fly. I don't have the foggiest notion where I got the idea from.
So after you were in Mississippi, then you passed the physical, then what happened?
Well, passed the physical, psychological, and the psychomotive, and then we were then shipped to Tuskegee.
And what kind of training did you have there?
At Tuskegee?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was initial ground school and pre-flight, which was just about a physical examination, again, at least once a week. You have a physical examination and pre-flight. That's the first 6 weeks of of your training phase. And this is, again, where they try to eliminate you as much as possible.
Were you training on airplanes then, or is this before you even got to that point?
That was before you got to the point. It was pre-flight, which was just exactly that, prior to flight training. And this was a period of about 6 weeks, about 4 to 6 weeks, somewhere along in there, that you went to school, you drilled, had awful lot of inspections.
So even at Tuskegee, they were trying to eliminate black. Was it because of black pilots, or just now we're into could you fly? Could you?
At this point, at this stage, no. You were an aviation cadet in name only, and you were going to ground school and learning various classes prior to the aviation type classes, and of course mostly having physical examinations. It's a process where they try to eliminate as many people as possible.
When you passed over that hurdle, then what happens next in the?
Okay, then you go into flight training. And that was at Tuskegee University. That's the only time that we went to Tuskegee University per se. And that was when that was under the CPT program, Civilian Pilot Training Program. And we got our flight training at Tuskegee, and go on from there.
Okay, you've completed that, and then what's the next step of the training?
The next step of the training, which I did not complete, was basic training. We went from there, the PT-17, into the BT-13, and from there into the AT-6, and from that into the P-40 or fighter-type aircraft. But the war had ended at that point in time. I went in 1945.
Okay.
And of course I came out. I had an opportunity to come out because at the quote-unquote the convenience of the government, they needed pilots like a hole in the head at the end of the war, because they had, hundreds and thousands of pilots. So rather than stay in and possibly get washed out, because they became far more stringent in the washouts to get rid of pilots. We started my class started out, 46C started out with something like 75 cadets. I think there were something like 10 or 15 that finished. I was not in the finishing class at that time because the war had ended. But I was given the opportunity to accept a discharge from the Air Corps, and I had the option of going back into the Air Corps or back into flight training if I so desired, and which I ultimately did. And that was when armed services were integrated by President Truman in 1948. And I came out in 45, and in 1948 the armed services were integrated, and that's when I went into flight training again. I took the examination and entered.
Did you face the same? Was it the same weeding process, even though it was integrated? Was that still institutionalized?
Well, the integration was complete at that point, and I went in 49. 48 was about the end of 1948 was when the president issued the proclamation, and I went in June, actually it's September of 49, and there was a lot of discrimination, yes. I was sent to Randolph Field, Texas. That was where I received my initial flight training. Of course, I had been flying before. I was flying before I went into the service. And about 2 years before I went into the service, I was flying in civilian life. Then I went to Tuskegee and then flew there in the primary flight training in the PT-17D. And then from I went back into civilian life and then re-enlisted and went back in as an aviation cadet and finished my flight training as a pilot in the Integrated Air Force.
Okay.
And that was October of 1950 when I received my commission.
Where were you stationed then?
Well, I was initially sent back here to O'Hare. Fantastic situation. I didn't particularly care for it. As far as the location, I was really glad to be stationed here at O'Hare. But the CO and I did not get along at all. he was a West Pointer, and West Pointers have an attitude about themselves that are kind of difficult to get along with. And he had this attitude that he was a pilot, which, he wore wings the same as I did. And the thing about it is that I've been flying since about 1943, which was just about when he started. Maybe a little before, he may have started a little before. But my flight time, as far as flight time was concerned, I had as much time, maybe as he did. And that was in the 56th Fighter Group, and I was in the 62nd Fighter Squadron at O'Hare. And Gabby Gabreski, Colonel Gabreski, was the group commander, and the squadron CEO, I don't recall his name right now, but he just enjoyed giving me a hard way to go. And I told him that, hell, as far as flying time was concerned, I had just about as much time, flight time, as he did. The only thing he had in more powerful aircraft. And at that time, there were jets. And I had been trained in jets, yes, but I'd been flying F-80s, and I got to over here, and I transitioned into the F-86. And anyway, I asked for a transfer and got it. And Gabby Gabreski, Colonel Gabreski, shipped me down to Wright-Patterson, the 97th Fighter Squadron. And that was by a wonderful CO. We became very good friends. And CO's name was Franklin Q. O'Connor. He was a lieutenant colonel, light colonel. And we got along beautifully. And he saw the problems that I had. He said, well, Dunjill says you're starting all over. So that's exactly what I did. And from there, I began flying and just enjoyed the hell out of flying, because that was what I wanted to do anyway.
Now, Korea's boiling up about this time, right?
Yes.
How did you get into that conflict?
Well, after, let's see, in November of '51, that was when I got my orders to report to Alameda, California, on a secret mission, quote unquote, secret. I went into a naval air station, and we had secret orders where I was to one of 75 pilots and 75 airplanes to be shipped to Korea. And secret nothing, I got on showed my officer's ID to the MPs at the gate. They hollered back, and this lieutenant, and he's going out on the Esperance, in those F-86s. Big deal. I'm on secret orders, Everything's quiet and whatnot, but there's a broadcast all over the place. Anyway, I got there and of course was indoctrinated for overseas training and flights. And I went on 75 aircraft, went on the Cape Esperance, which was an small aircraft carrier. So we had the 75 aircraft, up on lashed down to the top deck and the hangar decks and everything. Every place they could put an airplane, they put it. And later on, I was very surprised that the aircraft were as steady and as on the flight deck as they were, because in some we ran into some pretty rough weather. There were some waves that came pretty close to coming up to the flight deck itself, and that was a huge aircraft carrier. So we I got over to, actually I ended up in Korea on Thanksgiving Day, 1951. That was when I had my initial indoctrination of, in Korea. And I was assigned to a squadron there. Prior to coming there, I had flown alert at all the time, because basically when you're in fighters, you're standing alert, and that's where you intercept unknown aircraft. And from the 97th, we flew in formation a flight of 16 aircraft from Wright-Patt Air Force Base down to Washington, D.C., and Washington, D.C. up to Otis Air Force Base in Massachusetts. And that's where I ran back into, he was then a major, Chappie James. Well, Chappie was the first black 4-star general. He ended up as the first black 4-star general. But I had known Chappie from some time ago, and just happened to run into Chappie there at Otis. And we flew together for a while, and flew intercepts. And there you had what was called GCI, which was Ground Control Intercept. And that's where you fly out and intercept unknown aircraft coming inbound to the States. And you can get out to maybe a couple of 100 miles, so you can't see land anyplace. You're flying over an awful lot of water. I remember one time, GCI gave us a heading about 6 o'clock in the morning, and as soon as we get over the water, we announce that our feet are wet. So we went, of course, we're right, Otis Air Force Base is right on Cape Cod, so as soon as you take off, your feet are wet, so they normally give you a heading of 090 degrees, which is 90 degrees, which is heading straight east, toward Europe someplace. And of course you're not going to fly that far, because normally those F-86s, just like those aircraft there, those are the same type of airplanes that you were flying. And we were headed, they headed us out to 090 degrees at Angels 25, which is 25,000 feet due east. And well, there's several situations that you can encounter, because normally when you intercept the aircraft, they're inbound, and you'll come back, and sometimes we'll come back just under their tail and get their serial number and the type of aircraft that they're flying. And you announce that back to GCI. And normally around 200 miles or so, you begin to run out of transmission. So what they'll do is they'll send somebody else up, sometimes maybe a P-51 or SA-16, which is a 4-engine aircraft, and just to relay messages. And this particular time, they gave us a heading of 090 Angels 25, and it targets at least 20 miles ahead. And we were headed due east, and there's such a thing as return or return point of no return. Once you reach that point, then what you want to do is head back to 70, reciprocal heading. But we are under orders from GCI, so we have to do whatever they tell us to do. And so we're telling them that we're approaching PNR, point of no return, and request a reciprocal heading, because we have not intercepted any aircraft. And relay that information. They send back the message that please be advised that this station has the authority to send you on a one-way mission. And that didn't set too well for us because, you know, we're sending in an land-based aircraft and we're over a whole lot of water.
How many people are on the plane?
One.
Okay.
There's two planes.
Okay, there's two.
Two pilots and two aircraft. And you're flying basically out in open formation like that. And Don Little, who was leading the flight, I was flying his wing. And so we're motioning to each other, you know, what the hell, you know. So we've got to maintain our 090 heading. And we're approaching 50% of our fuel is gone. And we're going back west. We want to go back west, which means that we're bucking basically to prevailing westerly winds. So we made several requests that for a reciprocal heading, and they told us, and you could see you hear kind of the anxiety in their voice, but still maintain your 090 heading. So finally they gave us a reciprocal heading, 270, and this is what's your fuel reading. So we gave them our fuel in pounds. Of course, that's the number of pounds that you have on board, and that's pretty accurate. And they told us to go up to Angels 30, so we went to 30,000 feet. So we're heading due east, and so they told us that we were going to take a fuel reading and compute our fuel consumption, and from what we're spending and with our heading and whatnot. And so you could hear the anxiety in their voice.
You think they heard it in yours?
Well, actually, I think we had I have a rather serious word that I use, the S word, you know. A four-letter word. So I'm using that S word. I've got. That's not going to pull it because we can run out of fuel. So anyway, they saw that they computed our fuel because they kept getting fuel checks and the number of pounds and our consumption. And since I was flying wing, I'm always the lowest on the fuel. So they headed us back over Boston and gave us a heading back to Cape Cod at Otis, and said you're going to make a landed formation and you're landing with the wind, but you should be able to land pretty well because you've got a long runway. And when you land, so when you squat down, you'll be very close to empty on your fuel. I said, thank you. So we headed to Otis. We could see it from over Boston, where we were. And so we landed in formation, squatted down, and nose gears touched down. And Don Little turned off, and I turned off. As soon as I turned off, I ran out of fuel. When Don was able to make it all the way back to the hard stand, and he ran out of fuel just approaching the hard stand. So that was it was pretty close. I was on fumes when when I was on the final approach.
Did you know what you were after? What When they were out there, never
Never saw that particular time. I never saw any aircraft at all. On the other hand, we've seen aircraft, intercepted aircraft, and a lot of times you encounter civilian aircraft, and sometimes they'll tell you to head them over to Otis, take them to Otis, and you come down and you fly, formation, close formation, and you point to them, you head in this direction, they think we're waving at them, they're waving back, like this. And I say, no, you head this way. Hi! And you report that back to the GCI, and they say, well, okay, fire a couple of rounds across their nose. So you pull out, pull back around and cross, and then pull up just like that and get about 45 degrees to them, and squeeze your trigger. And got 650 caliber machine guns lit out on the nose. That gets their attention real quick. So, and then you come back, and then you're slow flying, because they're flying somewhere around 150, and that's almost our landing speed. We're landing somewhere around 135, somewhere along in there. So we've got flaps down, landing gear down, and we're completely dirty when, as far as speed brakes, landing gear, and flaps, and we're mushing along at about 150 miles an hour, and they're flying normally. And so you keep pointing, you go this way, after you've made your pass at them and fire the guns, and they gets their attention. So then you say, you this way, if you go that way or whatever you guide them, and then just go down, and you're basically slow flying and following them right straight along, and you're guiding them along. And when you get over to the Otis, you say, point, going to land, just like this. And because normally they're on different frequency, we're on combat frequency, and they're on tower frequency. And sometimes if we can contact them, we'll switch over to the tower frequency and tell them verbally, says, land at Otis. You're over at Otis Air Force Base, land. And we follow them down, all the way down to the point to where we can't fly any slower, and take off and then come back and land. Well, once they land, then they're met by the military police, the air police, and they're guided in at that point. And of course, we don't see them there at that point. We lose them. But normally we guide them down, and a lot of times they're airliners that haven't reported in on time. We'll intercept them, and of course their speeds are at that time in the 51. That was where they were still had propeller-driven airliners, and we're flying jets. And so when we're flying along with them, they're flying about 200, which is not bad. So we could fly along at that speed pretty well. And we can fly right along, and sometimes what we'll do to get their attention is get right on their wingtip, get up close to their ailerons as possible, and then wiggle your wings. That disrupts their airflow, and so that gets their attention real quick. And you point to them, you go this way or whatever direction, and if and then we tell them to go to channel 2 or tower frequency, and sometimes we're able to contact them on the tower frequency. Someone says, okay, you head toward Boston, or to land at Boston, They're escorting you in. That's about the size of it.
Now, did you see action in Korea?
Yes. 100 combat missions.
Where were you? So combat mission, that's not intercept, right?
No. That's combat mission is where you cross the bomb line in Korea, which is the 38th parallel. And from there, anytime you fly north of that combat zone. And Seoul, Korea is just about 17 miles south of that. So by the time we got airborne, we got our gear up, combat territory. So we're still still climbing.
Are you flying then as a fighter pilot, or?
Yes. Generally, in that point, you're flying just like, matter of fact, that particular in the center one, on the right-hand side, that's me taking off on a combat mission. I don't know which one, but that's my aircraft taking off on a combat mission. And by the time you get your landing gear up and flaps up, you've gone past the 30th parallel. So by the time you get your gear up and you're in flaps, you're in combat territory.
Any particularly harrowing experiences then?
Well, yes.
That you care to talk about?
Okay. All right. See the aircraft. On the upper picture on the right-hand side. Mm-hmm. Okay, you have 3 machine guns on the left side and 3 on the right. So you have 650 caliber machine guns. Those guns fire 650 rounds per minute each. So you got 6 of those firing 650, so you're talking about 3,900 rounds per minute. Those guns are cranking out. Now, just below those guns, you have what are called ammo cans. This is where the ammo comes out, goes up to the gun, it's fired, and the shells come back in to the cans. That's done because of weight. You don't want to, there's just so much weight and balance that you have to figure, and you've got to have that weight up in the front. Okay, so now, let's see. I did not fly my particular aircraft, my aircraft that particular day. I flew another aircraft, and I happened to be separated from my wingman. My wingman was flying on my wing, and we got separated in combat. And we got separated. Normally, you'll call each other, and so normally you'll meet around 25 or 30,000 feet over Pyongyang, which is the North Korean capital, which was coded as ping pong. That was a code name of Pyongyang. So you fly Angels 2-5 over ping pong rendezvous. Well, that meant that both approach Pyongyang at 25,000 feet, join up, then your wingman joins the leader, and then you lead them back wherever you want to go. Well, this particular day, we were still separated, and I was flying over Chodo, the island of Chodo, and the island of Chodo is a small island just off of Pyongyang. And I was looking for my wingman, and he's looking for me. He's approaching, looking for me, and I get a guy leg on the back of me, and I look up in my rearview mirror. This rearview mirror just, well, can you see? No. Well, right here, see my helmet on the top? Just under that helmet is a mirror, and you can see in back of you. It's a rear view mirror, just like your rear view in your car, only it's wide. And you can see the guy shooting at you, which you don't want to, that's not a very healthy situation. And this guy, and I had, at that particular time, was the first time that anyone had been fired on with on cannon shells with proximity fuses. I was the first guy that had been shot at with proximity fuses. And that's where the cannon shell comes out from him, and it goes just so far and it explodes. So what happens is that if you are close to that area and it explodes, then shrapnel or whatever would get you or get into the engine or whatever, hurt your engine or cause damage, whatever that far. And of course that's, when those shells go out, you're talking several shells coming out at once. So I saw them coming below me and coming up, and of course my S word there, go over to the right quick as possible and back, and what I did was, and I was right on the Mach then, and all I did was just start snap rolling, and he was firing at me, and the horizon was just going around like a top, and I was literally spinning horizontally, and I was snap rolling, and I'm not doing anything but just going around like this, horizontal, and he's firing at me, and I had to break the spin, so now I'm breaking the spin. When I broke the spin, that was when the aircraft went flat, and at that point, I didn't know it until much later, but I pulled 13.5 Gs. A G is your own weight. And if you're pulling, 5 Gs, and you're weighing 200 pounds, 5 Gs is times your weight is, you weigh 1,000 pounds. Well, I pulled 13.5 Gs at that time. Well, of course, blood just went right out of my head, and I lost consciousness, and I went out like a light. And I happened to be about 30,000 feet at the time, and when I woke up again, I was about 15,000, and when I didn't have the foggiest notion of what was where, and this guy was. Yeah, I didn't see him anymore. I guess he must have figured he hit me or whatever, because I went down. I went from around 25 or 30,000 feet down to around 15,000. So I guess he figured he hit me and took off. But I didn't see him anymore at all.
Was it a MiG fighter?
It was a MiG-15, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were the first guy to be shot with that sort of burst
Proximity
weapon,
fuses, yes.
Did the military know that was being developed, and did you say, "Hey guys, something different happened here," or anything like that?
When I mentioned it, there was a guy, Dick Ridlin. He was a captain. He was the intelligence officer. And he was the guy that interviewed me when I came back. Well, when I got back, I landed, but when I come up and to the hard stand to park the aircraft, the mechanic came up and climbed up on the aircraft. He says, "What the hell did you do to this airplane?" And well, the airplane was a little sluggish to me, but that seemed normal. But I had pulled so many G's that I pulled 13 and a half G's. I didn't find out about it until later, but the wings were warped. All the top of the wings, all along, were just like a washboard. Nickel. Rivets were popped in some of the places, and some of the rivets were actually popped out and gone. And but there were a couple of pieces of metal where they, had been bent back. But we grounded the airplane, and what happened was that they put it on. It wouldn't fly it back to Japan. They put it on a tug and towed it from Korea to Japan, to the North American Air Base there at Fukuoka, Japan. And I happened to fly back on a flight, and it was a ferry flight because I was also a test pilot, and so I flew back to Fukuoka to pick up some aircraft. I happened to see this particular aircraft, 611, and so I asked the guy, I said, what happened to 611? And he told me, he said, some stupid idiot pulled 13 and a half G's. I said, I'm that stupid idiot. I said, I'm that stupid idiot. He asked what about it, so I told him. And so what they did was just remove the wings and all the spars and everything, put new spars on the wings and new wings on the aircraft. And same thing back on the tailplane. So
then when did you 100 missions over Korea, and then what happened? Did you leave the service or continue?
No, you're what's called FIGMO, and for the lack of a better phrase, forget it. I've got my orders. In other words, go home.
Okay. I understand.
So you're FIGMO, meaning that you've got your orders to go home, and so you go home. Hop an aircraft in Korea and fly back to Japan, more than likely Johnson Air Force Base, and take a C-54 out of Johnson. And your next landing spot will either be Midway or Hawaii. You landed in both. Back to California.
What is your rank at this time?
First lieutenant.
Okay. And then what happened with your life? What did you do then?
Well, I continued flying in the Air Force. I came back in '52, June of '52, from November of '51 to June of '52, and I was just flying to fly the airplanes. I went into '53. Matter of fact, in the lower right aircraft, that's the F-86D. That's an all-weather fighter interceptor, and there you're literally flying on instruments. And that particular aircraft, it has no machine guns. There's 24 rockets that's in the belly of the aircraft, and when you select on your armament panel how you want those rockets to fire, because they're rockets, they're 3-inch rockets. You have 24 3-inch rockets, and they're under the belly of the airplane. When you fire them, what happens is that the pod comes down, the rockets fire, and the pod comes back in just about a half a second. So the pod will come down, rockets fire,
take off,
and the pod comes back up
by ground radar
to
your target area.
Anything.
Pick up your target on your own radar scope.
Just have everything happen.
Set up your pass, knock them out of the sky,
boom, boom.
come back and land without ever seeing the target or the ground.
And rockets go
So you
down,
saw
the pod goes down, the
A
rockets
lot
start.
of, from when you start flying at night,
Well,
19 or
daytime.
so, 18, until then, you saw a lot of changes in
Oh,
technology.
sure, yes.
But the flying was second nature.
Flying
mean-
is, all aircraft fly the same, regardless of what size they are.
Did the speed, did you think, oh man, I'm going faster or something? Or did you just, oh, I'm flying?
You're flying, and that's something that you don't think about, the speed. Yes, you're flying around 600, 650, 700 miles an hour, and you're flying as close as the range, the thunder jets when you see them, flying around here. I've flown that close many times without even thinking about it at all. I mean, that's normal.
It takes a special person though, doesn't it?
Yes, well, you've got to know the leader, and the leader has to know who's with him, how he's flying, and those who are flying wing has got to know the leader very well. That's something that you train, and you do it over and over so much that it's just normal. It's just a normal thing. You're flying. You drive 60 miles an hour down the expressway, and you think you're going, like crazy. Well, you're going roughly 1/10 the size of the speed that we're flying. Because we're flying, it's over 600 miles an hour, almost close to 700 miles an hour. When you get to 600 knots, you're pushing the hell out of 700 miles an hour. Because 1 knot is 1.5 miles an hour. So your conversion of 600 knots times 0.15, so you're approaching 700 miles an hour.
Let me ask you
Pushing the hell out of 700.
one more question. That your training, the Tuskegee Airmen, your service, do you feel like you've been recognized, justified, proud of what you've done, and people say, hey, here's somebody who's done, and not only you, but the other ones who shared that common experience?
Yes, actually, you see, when you start to think about the efforts that have been made in confronting discrimination and segregation, it's something that you never forget. You always remember. And you never forget the people that talk to you and in how they talk to you. Majority of them will talk down to you. And chances are, you can have a college degree and they'll still talk to you as if, boy this or boy that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for example, I was down at getting training at Valdosta, Georgia, in the F-86D. Okay, now, I'm a pilot. I'm flying aircraft at the speed of sound, or just below the speed of sound. I'm doing something that very, very few people, comparatively a handful of people, have ever done in this world. I've been up to 59,500 feet. And that's where I have seen all or part of all 5 Great Lakes, just in one glance. Very few people have been up that high. Very few. And I have seen, when I was up around at the 59,500 indicated, which was over 60,000 feet, I could see part of Lake Superior. I could see all of Lake Michigan. I could see all of Lake Huron. I could see all of Lake Erie. I mean, in part of Lake Ontario. So that's all or part of all 5 Great Lakes. Now, how many people have seen that?
The astronauts.
Yes, the astronauts, yes. And how many is
Not
that?
many.
12, 13?
Yeah, not that many.
Okay, you got the SR-71 pilots. These are the guys that fly the SR-71 or that flies at 2,200 miles an hour. All right, yes, they get up to 100 to 150,000 feet, yes. And they fly at 3 times the speed of sound, 2,200 miles an hour. That's fine, yeah, well, okay. But how many of those are there? Comparatively few. So there's less than 1,000 people that have ever been up that high to be able to see what I saw. Less than 1,000. And look at, this country has what? 300 million people?
Mm-hmm.
I'm over 12 miles straight up. And at that point, it dawns on me that here I am, literally, physically, over 12 to 13 miles straight up. And I don't even know I'm gone. No one knows where I am. So if I'm going to make anything of myself, I'm going to have to get down on the ground and get back and start hustling just like everybody else. That was when I realized at that point, hell, they don't even miss me. Here I am.
On top of the world.
On top of the world, yes. And that was when I realized that I've got to get back on the ground and make something out of myself. Do something that's worthwhile. Well, I actually did, but still, when people talk to you and throughout the South, they're talking down to you as if you're dirt under their feet. Well, I'm not dirt under their feet. I've got a college degree. And the majority of the people that are talking to me are talking as if first of all, they're using language that I would not use, talking in a manner that is completely foreign to me as far as the use of their English language is concerned, and it shows their lack of education. So they're talking to me as if, well, you're not privileged to go fishing with me. Well, I don't care to go fishing with you anyway. I'm not that much of a fisherman. That's number one. Number two, if I wanted to go fishing, I'd take my casting rod instead of a cane, bamboo pole, and go casting rather than sitting there with a bobbin. And that's my skill. So, he's not making any sense to me. And to me, I could care less about him.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave a guy a lift, and I got my Oldsmobile. It was a new Oldsmobile at the time. I gave him a lift, and he's telling me about the things that, the places that he can go, and I'm not privileged to go. And he's telling me about all these various places, and finally I just stopped the car and says, get the hell out of here. Get out of my car. He says, you're telling me places I can't go, and I'm giving you a lift? And that doesn't make sense. Get out of my car. So, I put him out. And in situations where I'm coming back, what's the name of that base? It's in Florida, Tyndall Air Force Base. That's where that was taken. We came back from the flight line, going back to our living quarters, and I stopped to pay a parking ticket that I got, and the policeman, told me how much, like $2 or $3 or whatever it was at the time. And I gave him the $2. And I saw and right along the corner, like the corner of the wall at the floor, he had parking speed limits and speed limit signs. Now, and they weren't posted, but they were sitting in the police station on the ground, on the floor in the corner. And I asked the police officer, aren't these signs supposed to be posted and he says, yeah. I said, and they haven't been posted, and I'm getting a ticket. So I tossed $1 down, and I said, here, take the $1 and put that toward posting the signs. And he says, boy, you better watch what you're saying. I said, hell, take the money and go ahead and post it, And that was the way I felt about it.
Mm-hmm.
But he was right, because had I insisted, I could have gotten into trouble myself. But that was, I just took the $1 and tossed it at him and says, use that to pay to put the parking signs up, or the speed limit signs. And of course that didn't go along very well with him, so I could care less. But again, he called me boy, so fine, okay. But still, I'm doing something that he doesn't even dream about doing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. When you start to think what you're doing as opposed to what everybody else is doing, it becomes a pretty elite class of people that have an association, what you're doing, how you're doing what you're doing. And the people are very, very close. For example, in the picture right here, the second one from the left, and the next one to me, the tallest guy in there, it's Yancey Williams. He's a Tuskegee Airman. Now, we were in the same class at Tyndall Field, Florida, checking out the F-86D. And when he got back he was stationed at Scott Field, just east of St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And he was killed. Of course, I'm still here. That's our class. Now, Yancey, he was a major then, and he filed a lawsuit against the federal government because he went to join the Air Force, Air Corps at the time, and World War II first started, just like everybody else. They weren't accepting blacks as pilots. He sued the federal government, Yancey Williams. And Tuskegee was in the process then of being built. So the lawsuit became moot and basically just disappeared.
But he stood up.
Yancey is the guy that filed the lawsuit against the federal government to train pilots, which actually ended up being trained at Tuskegee. But when you stop to think, guys like Yancey, hell, what have I done, in comparison? Look at the people that did their thing in Selma, Alabama. I was here and undergoing business at the time. What was I doing? I was talking to Ryerson Steel to hire blacks in the office machine industry. I was in the office machine industry. I was an office machine dealer, and I was a service office equipment. When I came out of the service, I became a service manager for Plus Computing Machines Incorporated, and ultimately went into the office machine business as such. At one time, I was the largest independent servicing organization in the Midwest United States, throughout the Midwest, from Canada to Mexico, and from around Colorado to about maybe Pennsylvania, straight north and south. I was the largest independent servicing organization in that area, in the United States. Well, again, these are things which I did, but I would get Ryerson Steel to hire blacks in their company. They ultimately did. And it was, every time I went there, the only thing black in that office was me. And that was it. And talking with this, I forget his name, but he was the office manager at the time. I was taking him back. I was working for Plus as a service manager. And so I took him back to his office, 26 and what is it? Rockwell. Anyway, he asked me, he says, "Now what do you think we should do as far as employment situation is concerned?" And I wondered, now, should I just let him have both barrels, or should I just be courteous, or what? You know, what does he expect? And I said, well, big business is nothing but a damn fool, because they're not hiring blacks in a way that they should be hiring, because they're losing money. Because if you were to hire, for example, a draftsman who is black as opposed to a draftsman who is white, normally to get that job, the black is going to accept a little bit less in salary to start with, and you're losing money, and you're losing experience, because that man can further your company as far as ideas are concerned. So big business is nothing but a damn fool in not hiring the Negro applicants. Well, when I left there, went out of business in '75, I happened to go to Ryerson Steel, and Ryerson Steel had plenty of blacks throughout that entire office, which again, I helped open that up for them. And that was not only, but I was in the largest servicing organization, Sears Roebuck, all the Sears stores from Waukegan to Gary, from Rockford to the lake. I handled all of their Plus equipment. I handled all of their mechanical calculating equipment. I had facilities on the Holman Avenue complex of buildings there, which they paid me to take care of their equipment. As I said, I was the largest independent servicing organization in the Midwest United States. And I had facilities downtown, yes, but I also had facilities at the west side office of buildings that my personnel didn't do anything but report there and take care of equipment and go home. If you didn't have 150 machines of one kind, we didn't even look at you. That was our 150 machines was one kind. Was before that was our minimum, and that was what we, A.C. Nielsen Company, Sears Roebuck, Western Electric. These are all huge companies. Illinois Bell Telephone Company. These are companies that I did business with. Now, this was in the 50s, 1958 and 59. In 1960 was when I formed my first corporation and expanded. And this is something of which I was the only, at that time I was the only black in the office machine business that was in the National Office Machine Dealers Association. I was a Chicago president. And I was it. That was it. There weren't any other blacks in the organizations. There were some in other organizations in the country, yes, but not in this area. So basically, I helped get people and blacks employed throughout the industry that I did business with. They took a much more serious turn because they encountered physical violence. I didn't. They did. My hat's off to them for the things that they took and the beatings that they had to take in Selma, and Dr. King and the walk from Selma to wherever he had walked in, I don't recall now. But my hats are off to those people, and undergoing the tremendous fortitude that they had to put up with. Now, they look at me and say, well, you're a hero. Look at what they've done. They've done things which I consider far better, far more than I did. These are people, and I did the things that people, look at you and say, he's a pilot, fine. Just like they look at a picture like something like this and say, well, he's flies combat in MiG-Alley. Well, that was the heading of the Tribune that when that picture first came out. And yet, to me, this is something that I did every day. I mean, this is not something that I say that I'm the world's best at doing this and doing that. Hell, this is something I do. When I go to work, every day, like doing this. So that's my job.